Watching the 1995 Mortal Kombat movie, I expected blood, brutality, and the bone crushing fatalities that made Mortal Kombat a household name. Instead, I got a sanitized martial arts film that felt more like a Saturday morning cartoon than the visceral fighting experience that sparked congressional hearings about video game violence. Paul W.S. Anderson's Mortal Kombat had all the pieces to succeed: iconic characters, a devoted fan base, and a source material rich with mythology. Yet it delivered one of the most frustrating adaptations in cinema history. The film follows Liu Kang, Johnny Cage, and Sonya Blade as they are transported to a mystical island to compete in an interdimensional tournament that will determine Earth's fate. It's a straightforward premise lifted directly from the game, but Anderson's execution strips away everything that made the source material compelling. The tournament that should have been a showcase of brutal combat becomes a series of underwhelming fight scenes that feel more choreographed for a dance recital than Mortal Kombat. At its core, Mortal Kombat was always about excess: excessive violence, excessive spectacle, excessive fun. The game didn't just feature fighting, it celebrated the absurd brutality of ripping out spines and burning opponents alive with a wink and a smile. Anderson's film attempts to explore themes of destiny, self discovery, and good versus evil, but these generic concepts pale in comparison to the game's unapologetic embrace of over the top carnage. The movie tries to be profound when it should have been proudly exploitative. The character portrayals range from adequate to insufferable, with Johnny Cage leading the charge in the latter category. Lyndon Ashby's interpretation of the Hollywood action star comes across as genuinely annoying rather than charmingly arrogant, making every scene with him feel like a chore to endure. Robin Shaw's Liu Kang delivers the emotional weight adequately, but he's saddled with a dialogue that sounds like it was written for a children's television show. The one bright spot is Christopher Lambert as Raiden, who seems to understand the absurdity of his situation and delivers his lines with a self aware camp that occasionally works, despite his bizarre costume design that makes him look more like a wandering peasant than the god of thunder. Visually, the film succeeds in some areas while failing spectacularly in others. Sub Zero and Scorpion look authentic enough to satisfy fans, the iconic masks and costumes translating well to live action. However, other character designs fall flat. Raiden's aforementioned peasant hat and awkward styling completely miss the mark of his game counterpart's intimidating presence. The practical effects, particularly Goro's impressive costume, stand as the film's technical highlight. The four-armed champion moves convincingly and maintains his threatening presence throughout his scenes, proving that practical effects could have elevated the entire production if used more extensively. The film's soundtrack deserves recognition as perhaps its only unqualified success. The driving electronic beats and aggressive rock tracks perfectly capture the energy and attitude of the game, creating an audio experience that still resonates in dance clubs and workout playlists decades later. The opening sequence, set to the iconic theme, promises the kind of intense experience that the rest of the film fails to deliver. The sound design during fight scenes, however, lacks the visceral impact needed to sell the combat as truly dangerous. What works in Mortal Kombat comes down to moments of visual spectacle and the infectious energy of its soundtrack. The film manages to create a sense of otherworldly atmosphere in its island setting, and certain action sequences, while not exceptional, provide adequate entertainment for viewers not intimately familiar with martial arts cinema. The practical effects work when utilized, demonstrates genuine craftsmanship that gives the fantasy elements weight and believability. The film's greatest weakness isn't any single element, but rather its fundamental misunderstanding of what made the source material special. The PG 13 rating neutered every aspect that defined Mortal Kombat's identity. Where the game reveled in its graphic fatalities and dark humor, the movie delivers bloodless fights and forced comedy. The martial arts choreography, while competent, lacks the dynamic flair of contemporary films from Jackie Chan or even the stylized violence of other 90s action movies. Plot holes abound, character development remains shallow, and the pacing drags whenever the film attempts to build dramatic tension instead of delivering the spectacle audiences crave. From my perspective, Mortal Kombat represents a perfect case study in how not to adapt video game source material. The film feels like it was made by people who understood the surface elements of the game, the characters, the tournament structure, the basic mythology, but completely missed the attitude and spirit that made players fall in love with the franchise in the first place. Watching it today, I realized that the trailer promised a dark, serious adaptation, but the final film didn't deliver on that, which feels somewhat disappointing. Mortal Kombat isn't entirely without merit, and I understand why some fans maintain affection for it, particularly those who discovered it as children or who value it primarily for its nostalgic soundtrack. However, as an adaptation of one of gaming's most influential franchises, it stands as a disappointing missed opportunity that prioritized broad appeal over faithfulness to its source. The film serves as a reminder that sometimes the most important aspect of an adaptation isn't what you include, but what you are willing to embrace about the original material's identity. For a franchise built on the tagline, "Get over here," this movie never gets close enough to grab you. That's my opinion on the 1995 Mortal Kombat. Do you agree with my thoughts? What are your thoughts on the film? Let me know in the comments. Please drop a like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.
You would never save me if my walls came down. That is underwater, you would let me drown. Watching as I suffocate. Darling, pull the trigger, honey, steal my crown. Choke me till I black out, put your hands around. Cut out my heart, I'm